Tell me a ghost story that sounds completely unbelievable but is entirely true.
I wanted to preface the story by saying that I grew up with a very spiritual mom. My mom has always believed in ghosts, spirits, paranormal things. In the past, she has used a board. I'm too scared to say these words, by the way. Well, I grew up with my mom taking me to psychics all my life. My mom, when I was a child, was told by several people that I had a gift, that I was born with a gift to see and feel beyond this realm. Essentially, that I had a clairvoyance and a sensitivity to energies. Mind you, this is a gift that I would gladly like to return. So anyway, needless to say that I have had several experiences from when I was a child, and so has my mom. Funny enough, all the women in my mom's side of the family, my younger sister, my 4 aunts, and my mom all have had some kind of experience of their own. Anyway, we lived in apartments growing up all my life. We would move from apartment to apartment several times, and the place that a lot of the activity happened at, we happened to live at for maybe 4 to 5 years. During this time period, I think I was between 13 to 16. When we first moved into this apartment, the neighbors that we had a few doors down that were already living there told us that there was a story of a little girl's presence that basically haunted the apartment complex. There was a pool in the back that was covered. It was filled with dirt or concrete, and the story was that a little girl drowned there. And I just also want to mention that these were not nice apartments. These were very old apartments. And yeah, another important thing to note is that I had an aunt that lived right next door. There was my apartment and she lived right next door. And I had a little cousin who at the time was around 6 years old. He had an imaginary friend who was a little girl whose name I shall not say because I don't want to bring that energy back. For some reason, most of the activity of the things that happened was in my mom's room. My room was directly across from my mom's room. There was a hallway in between, but they faced each other directly. There was a bathroom. This was upstairs, so there was a bathroom in between the 2 bedrooms, and that was the only bathroom upstairs. The other bathroom was downstairs. So this is an important part of the story. I was always terrified of my mom's room because at this point I had already had other experiences that centered around her room. For example, just a side story, there was this one time where I was taking care of my sister, and all of my family, all of my aunts were at my aunt's house next door. It was a party. It was maybe Thanksgiving or my aunt's birthday, which is also November, and they were all celebrating. And so because my sister was tired, I was tired, I brought her back to the apartment and put her to bed in my mom's room. And when I was looking in the mirror to take off my makeup or just look at myself, I noticed my shadow behind me moved. And so I told myself, okay, well, obviously it's my shadow, so if I move, it's gonna move. And something about it just scared me. Something about seeing the shadow like cast behind me scared me. I stopped just to see what would happen, and then the shadow grew taller and started to move across the room, and I'm starting to get chills. That's only one of the things that happened. There were also several things that happened to my mom in her own room. Anyway, that's not the story I'm telling, at least right now. Home alone very often because my mom worked all the time, and I didn't have a car at this time. I was maybe around 15, maybe 16, and I did have friends that had cars, but I did not have a car. So oftentimes I would lock myself in my room. At this stage, I was already very afraid of being alone. I was terrified of the dark, and I was terrified of ever leaving my room. I was terrified of my mom's room. I wouldn't leave my room just to avoid seeing my mom's room that was across the hall. So this means there was often times where I wouldn't eat and I wouldn't go to the restroom. And there was this one time where I just happened to be alone for a really long time. It got to the point where I had to go to the restroom. Part of the deal when I was alone, because my mom already knew how afraid I was to be there, was that she would always close her door, her bedroom door, when she left and turn off the light. If she didn't do this when she left, then I would muster up the courage to run across the hall, turn off her light and close the door, just because I didn't want to see any activity underneath the door. Like, I didn't want to see any light or shadow activity under her door. And this is really important. When I tell you I was paranoid about this. I was adamant about this. And I always, if I was alone, I made sure the door was closed and I think you know where this is going. This time that I was alone and I was in my room for majority of the day, it got to the point where I needed to leave the room and I needed to go to the restroom. And I just remember that I had peeked out of my bedroom before, trying to get the courage to go to make sure her door was closed, her light was off. It was. And so went back in my room, grabbed my phone, was talking myself up to go to the restroom. I just didn't want to see her room. And of course, when I go back out to walk to the restroom, I freeze because I look across and her light is on. Immediately, I retreat back to my room. I start talking to myself, telling myself, maybe I mistook what I saw. But I knew in my gut, and I knew because I checked, that the light had been turned off and it had been off and now it is on. I don't know how much time passed, at least another hour, that I just hid in my room. Instead of fight or flight, I froze. I just froze in place and I was too scared to move. I started praying. I had a rosary I always had on me and just started praying. Well, eventually, because I knew my mom wasn't going to be home, nobody was going to be home. My aunt worked with my mom at the time, and so nobody was home next door. I knew that I was going to be alone for a few more hours. I eventually mustered up the courage again to, at the very least, I wanted to confirm that what I saw was true, and if somehow I was able to run to the restroom and then just come back, get that done. But then when I opened my door, I now see her doors slightly open. The light is still on and her door is slightly open. With this, I knew that I knew that something was happening. So once again, retreat back to my room. At this stage, I'm freaking out. Like, even talking about this, it freaks me out. Eventually, fast forwarding through the time it felt like hours were passing. So the rooms were across from each other and the staircase was next to my room. So I thought maybe if I just am able to turn the corner and run down the stairs and leave the apartment, that's what I'll do. I'm just too scared to be here. And so I open the door again and now her light is off again and the door is still open. And I just see a shadow, a short shadow standing in the crack of the door. I freeze. I freeze. When I say I still get chills talking about this. I tried to tell myself maybe it's something hanging on the door, maybe it's this and that. I had checked after my mom was finally home. Nothing was hanging on the door and nothing is in the view of the door. Like, you can't see anything from her bedroom from the view of the door. I don't know what that was, but I do. At this stage, I can't be at the apartment anymore. I'm frozen in fear and I can't even get myself to run down the stairs. I go back in my room and I call a friend of mine who had a car and I tell her, you need to come pick me up. I'm scared and I can't be here. We had a bad habit of always leaving our door unlocked because my aunt was next door, and just in case they were in and out of our apartment all the time, our door was always unlocked. So I tell my friend, the door's unlocked, come get me, go straight up to my room, come get me. So being a good friend, she comes, she goes up the stairs, I'm ready to go. First thing she says is, where did your sister go? Grab your sister. And I said, no, I'm alone. I'm not taking care of her today because I babysat very often. We can just go. Then she tells me the words that have haunted me to this day. She says, but I just heard her laughing. I heard her laughing while I was going up the stairs. Once again, this isn't the first thing and it's not the last thing that happened in that apartment. That apartment turned my stern, logical stepdad into a believer of things beyond